Hey, welcome aboard, everybody. It is time for the Barely pregame show brought to you by Chicago Sports Zone Chicago and TickSplits.com. But before we get started, I wanted to speak on behalf of the entire Chicago Sports Zone team. The Chicago Bears lost a member of their organization this week. He's one of the reasons why I am the Bear fan I am. In fact, if I move my head, you can see who I'm talking about. The one and only Gale Sayers lost his battle to dementia this past Wednesday. And this is the guy that forever entrenched the Bear fandom in this guy's heart. So my condolences and our condolences to the Bears family and the Sayers family. A true legend, a candle who burned out way too quick in the NFL. Gale Sayers only really had 4 healthy seasons in the NFL, and every time he touched the ball, he definitely was a threat to go all the way. His 6 touchdowns on December 12th of 1965. No player in the history of the NFL has scored 6 touchdowns since. And we had to start the show by saying thank you, Gale. Rest in peace, and hopefully we'll see you down the end of the line. Ivan, tough week for the Bears with the passing of Gale Sayers.
Yeah,
but we were able to celebrate another victory. As shaky as it is, but as Hakeem Hicks said perfectly, 2-0 is delicious.
It is, and I'm a little skeptical of it just because of the way they ended that last game. I expected at least 14 more points, and they could have gotten it. A few things go right here or there. A-Rob secures that ball on the sidelines. Eddie Jackson doesn't get screwed out of a interception for 6. The game's a lot different, but the Bears are 2-0. Like it's better to be 2-0 and build on your flaws than 0-2. Trying to catch up while you're rebuilding.
And as we sit here this morning, 90 minutes away from game day, we literally have an opportunity exactly 12 hours from now to be 3-0 and alone atop the NFC North, because later on this evening, the Packers have to travel down to New Orleans, and the Saints haven't played that well either, and it's a time for the Saints to get healthy against Green Bay, but it's a tough challenge. So getting back to the last week's game, the Bears started off strong. They won. They scored 17 points early. Anthony Miller dropped a short touchdown pass, which took 4 points off the board. The interception, as much as a lot of Bear fans think that Eddie Jackson got screwed, to the letter of the law, he went through, hit him early, got the interception. So I hate to say this, but it was actually a good call. He did interfere with the receiver, brought it back for a touchdown. It was a hell of a run. So if you take away those 7 points, the 4 points that they missed when Miller dropped a short touchdown, and then the field goal they missed at the end of the fourth quarter, there's your 14 points right there.
Yep. Yeah, 14, and it's like
here's where
real quick, Mike, we lose you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. So it was and I could see it could have went either way. Of course I'm going to be biased and want it to go in the Bears' favor. It was just my frustrations are more. Why didn't we put the pedal to the metal again? We scored 17 points in the first half. Why didn't we come out quick? Why didn't we come out and go for the jugular coming out in that second half? I felt we were a little slow to start the second half, and I felt like that set the tone for the rest of the game. Everybody came out, relatively flat.
I think you're right. And that's been a problem with Nagy's offenses ever since he's been here. They start out fast, and then the third quarter, everything shuts down and become reliant on the defense to carry them through the rest of the game. Here's where I have my struggles. Trubisky played well. look at the touches in Sunday's game. Colin only had 6 touches. Jimmy Graham had 1 touch. Anthony Miller, if you don't count the 2 touches that hit his hands that he dropped, he had nothing. He was a blank on the scoreboard. Allen Robinson only had 3 touches. As far as passing targets were concerned, Robinson led the team as he normally does with 9 targets, but he only caught 3. He was the target of the 2 interceptions that caused, and you got to, sometimes you just got to tip the hat to the defender, because what's his name, Branberry, made a great play on the ball and caught right as he was coming down, and inertia basically helped take that ball away from Robinson. But that's a ball that 9 times out of 10 Robinson's going to catch. Jimmy Graham only had 1 target. Cole Kmet only had 1 target. Darnell Mooney had 3 targets. He caught all 3 balls that came his way. So there wasn't a lot to go around. The Bears did run the ball well for the 2nd week in a row. They ran the ball 32 times, 135 yards. They held on to the ball for almost 34 and a half minutes. So when you take a look at it, it's not so bad as it seems, but we still are leaving, we're going through the end of the game wanting more.
Yeah, and but the one thing that I want to say is a bright spot is how they're utilizing the running game. I like the way that they're balancing David Montgomery in the run and the pass. We saw him catch a touchdown pass on a swing route last week. And, I like the way he's running. I thought we were going to lose him there for a minute, because he did come down on his head in a scary situation there. I think he was trying to hurdle his defender. And I don't know. I don't know if you're like me, Mike. With these runners, I understand if you're going to hurdle the guy in open space. But we're talking about in between the tackles. You're trying to jump over a defensive lineman or a linebacker. It doesn't make sense. To me, it's like, keep your feet on the ground and gain the yards. You're risking injury trying to jump over the guy for 1.5 yards that you could already get by running through him or falling forward. I feel like it was a little dangerous, but I do like how Matt Nagy is using David Montgomery and the rest of the running backs, Cordell Patterson too.
Absolutely. Patterson has been kind of, I won't say a shining star, because he doesn't have that many touches to what Cordero Patterson ended up with. He ran the ball 7 times for 25 yards. He had 2 catches for only 8 yards. So it's interesting that the Bears they're this close. They're this close to putting it all together. But that said, let me ask you this question. If Mitch Trubisky ends up the year with 3,500 yards passing, 40 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions, would you be happy with those numbers?
Anybody would be happy with those numbers, I feel like. Especially after coming off the year that he had. Say again, Mike?
Well, that's the numbers that he is pacing for after 2 weeks. 40 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, 3,500 yards. To put that in context, do you know how many touchdowns in the history of the Bears franchise, how many touchdown passes leads the Bears in 100 years, the most touchdown passes they've ever had by one quarterback 1 year? Do you know how many it is?
I want to say 27.
You're close. 29.
Mm.
Eric Kramer in 1995 threw for 29 touchdown passes. We've never had a 30 touchdown passing quarterback in the history of this franchise. Of course, the franchise, their detractors will say, well, that's the Bears. The Bears have historically have had bad quarterback play. But yeah, it is what it is. But we've relied on running backs and defense in the history of this franchise, and it's time now to, I think, and we'll talk about this when we get a little bit later. But I think they have to. Well, let's talk about it now. What do we have to do to win this game this week against Atlanta?
honestly, I think this is going to be the defense's game. I think this will be the defense's coming out party for the 2020 season. You're talking about an Atlanta team that is. You could talk about their injuries. Julio Jones might be out this game. The right tackle might be out this game. They have a plethora of injuries. But let's talk about their mentality. They just blew a 20-point lead last week to the Dallas Cowboys and lost. I think this team, with all the talent, I think that team needs to blow up. I think that team needs to go in another direction because it seems to me that you can't have a 20-point loss. That's a fireable offense. You can't lose a 20-point lead like that in the NFL. You've already and I know they had it in the Super Bowl. We already know the 28-3 debacle that they had it won, but they didn't. You can't do that. I think the psyche of that Atlanta Falcons football team is at a real low. And I think this Bears team riding high off of 2 wins and knowing that they're right there, that they're about to put it together, is going to go ahead and punish this team.
I think you're right. And when you go back and look at each of the last 2 years, the third week of the season was the defense's coming out party. This is in effect the third game of the preseason in this COVID shortened preview to the league, but right. But they all count. They all count. So you've got some interesting things going on. First of all, for the inactives today, both Mac and Quinn are going to be playing. The inactives again for the third week in a row is Duke Shelley, Arlington Hambright. Danielle McCullers, a nose tackle, which they just acquired this week. Riley Ridley once again is showing up on the inactive list, and outside linebacker Travis Gibson. Those are inactives for the week. So we've got pretty much it's 100%, man. It's all systems are going, both offensively and defensively for this team. Defensively, you're right. It's time for them to really show up on defense, especially with that front seven. Their quarterback Matty Ice is not a mobile target like Stafford is, and like the Jones can be. They ran a little bit out of the pocket, but we know where Matty Ice is going to be. Matt Ryan is a drop back quarterback. He's going to be in the pocket. You can put an X 7 yards from the line of scrimmage and say, let's meet at the quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears defense can do. I would love to see this. I would love to see press man coverage and get at least 5 guys going after the quarterback so he doesn't have time to think and the cornerbacks have time to react with straight up man coverage. They can either get an interception or they can get a tip ball that can fly into the hands of Eddie. Let's get Eddie Jackson those 6 points that they took away from him last week.
Absolutely. And real quick, Mike, and that I feel like that's on Chuck Pagano right now. Just because, like, we've seen him. It's almost been like the beginning of a prize fight. They're just kind of pawing at it. When are you going to break through? I want to see a little bit more a little more blitzing. I want to see you create the pressure, especially if they find themselves like they found themselves in Detroit and they found themselves later in the game in against the Giants, not being able to generate pressure. So I would like to see him find a way when those situations come to generate some pressure.
On offense, this is the guy I'm expecting to go today, and I'm going to just pan down to where number 29, Tariq Cohen. You'll be surprised, Ivan. I will have a different jersey on for every game this year. But Tariq Cohen, by far, is I think, the key to this game. We haven't seen any screen passes. We haven't seen him targeted too much. You've got Allen Robinson's going to get double covered. I'd like to see a little bit of the tight ends in the seam and down the middle of the field to open up the sidelines outside the numbers for Tariq Cohen. Hopefully Alan Miller can have a rebound. I'm truly expecting Trubisky to throw for at least 2 touchdowns and pass for well over 300 yards today.
I'm with you on that. And you know, before I go ahead and talk about the offense, let's go to commercial real quick.
Perfect.
I just heard my favorite band is in town. I'd love to get good seats, but everywhere I've looked, the ticket sites have crazy service fees.
Haven't you heard of TixSplits?
Who?
TixSplits. They don't gouge you with crazy fees. The price they advertise is the price you pay, plus a small delivery fee.
Never pay service fees again. Go to TixBlitz.com today. TixSplits.com. Guaranteed seats, low prices. That's TixSplits.com. Every ticket, every venue, everywhere.
That's right, TixSplits.com. Every ticket, every venue, everywhere. It's guaranteed seats, guaranteed emotions, and you never, ever have to worry, A, that there are no service fees, and B, every single seat is guaranteed. Our friends at TixSplits might be having a little promotion coming up for us here in a couple of weeks, so we're looking forward to that. As we are getting started here, Ivan, we started talking a little bit about the offense, so let's go right to your thoughts.
Yeah, so you know, my thoughts are the same with Trubisky. I feel like he has, although it's looked kind of sluggish, I think his body language, the way he's carried himself, the way he's responded after he's thrown a pick or two, it's different. He's not in his own head anymore, and I think he has a better grasp of the offense. He has. They found success in the running game, so that, and it's obvious that that's helping. So I think Mitch Trubisky, like you said, they opened it up the offense a little more today. I think David Montgomery still feasts on that Falcons defensive line, but I think Mitch Trubisky he's gonna be accurate, consistent, and I think you're right. He's gonna throw 2 touchdowns, over 300 yards.
A little bit of trivia for our audience. Get this, true or false? Mitch Trubisky has thrown for as many touchdowns as Deshaun Watson and Tom Brady combined after 2 weeks. True or false?
Oh, it's got to be false.
It's true. It's true. Tom Brady has 3 touchdown passes. Deshaun Watson only has 2 touchdown passes. Mitch Trubisky has thrown for 5 touchdown passes in 2 weeks. In fact, only Russell Wilson with 9, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, and Josh Allen have each thrown for 6. Those are the only quarterbacks in the NFL that have thrown for more touchdowns through 2 weeks than Mitch Trubisky. At the beginning of the year, if I told you that David Montgomery would run for over 1,200 yards, would you be happy with that?
I'd be ecstatic because of what we saw last year. I'd be more than happy with 1,200 yards.
You know, despite the fact that the Bears have been successful running back by committee, that's exactly what David Montgomery's on pace for. He's on pace for 1,232 yards, and he's on pace for another 400 yards in receiving. So when you take a look at what Trubisky's numbers are through the first 2 weeks, what Montgomery's numbers are through the first 2 weeks, it's just hard to imagine that we're sitting here biting our fingers and our toenails, waiting for the game to end, hoping that the opposition doesn't score a last-minute touchdown. You're absolutely right. The key to this game is to get off to an early lead and really put their foot down on the neck of their opposition and not let them get off the mat and come back for a couple of freak scores. Getting the ball on defense, taking the ball away, and not committing any stupid turnovers. One of the additional nice thing that we've seen through 2 weeks, Ivan, is penalties. The Bears on offense have not committed.
Mike, you're reading my mind. You're reading my mind.
It's hard to imagine that 3 weeks ago we didn't even know who each other are, and here we are reading each other's minds already.
Right.
But we want a special shout out to Sean Sierra at Chicago, at Sports Zone Chicago, for combining us to having a little forethought on how we would blend well together. So, Sean, if you're listening, shout out to you for putting us two together, us two diehard Bear fans. Bears, Falcons, 2-0 versus 0-2. The Titans travel to Minnesota. They're 2-0 versus Minnesota, who's a very disappointing 0-2. Kirk Cousins threw for less than 150 yards and 3 interceptions last week. Detroit is 0-2. They got to travel to Arizona, who are also 2-0. And now to end the evening, Green Bay on Sunday Night Football travels to New Orleans, and New Orleans got embarrassed on Monday Night Football in Las Vegas last week. So a lot of people are giving Drew Brees the old heave ho. Hey, you're over 40, and it's now time. You're doing way too many checkdowns. I'm expecting a big game out of Drew Brees.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll say this: I expect a bigger game out of that Saints defense, because the thing about that Saints defense is they always rise to the occasion, especially when you're taking a back seat to the offense and Drew Brees. So that Saints defense always seems to have a chip on their shoulder, and they always seem to be right there, ready to answer the bell. And I think that Saints defense is going to give the Packers some trouble, because you're talking about not having Devontae Adams. You're talking about a front that is not to be reckoned with. And I think that, if you could limit that running game, it's going to be all Aaron Rodgers again, and that's not what he wants, I'm sure. But that's exactly what the Saints want, because they want to go ahead and dial up that pressure. If they can shut down that run of the Green Bay Packers, that's exactly what they'll do.
Julio Jones is out for today. So Ridley's bigger brother is going to be the key to the offense for the Atlanta Falcons, as is Todd Gurley. I think that if you double team Ridley and do a lot like they did against New York to stop Barkley from getting his shoulder pads parallel to the line of scrimmage so he can move north and south, I think the Bears can do extremely, extremely well. It is now time in our show for our History Corner segment. The Atlanta Falcons joined the league back in 1966, and the Bears and the Falcons have only met 27 times. In the history of the league, the Bears hold a 14-13 edge. The last time they played was opening day of the 2017 season, when Jordan Howard dropped a touchdown pass from Mike Glennon at the end of the ball game, and then they threw an incompletion, and then on fourth down he got sacked to end the game. So they were that close to winning that game. Of course, that was the one and only season that Mike Glennon was with the Bears. He lasted a whole 4 games before they replaced Glennon with Mitch Trubisky, who ended up going 4-12 that year.
I'm shocked he got that far. I'm shocked he got 4 games. I'm shocked he got 4 games. I remember that. Honestly, that game should have been the light bulb. Like, oh wow, this is probably not going to go well. You know what I mean? Like it was, to lose a game like that was heartbreaking. But then you got a guy like Mike Glennon in there. Ugh.
Glennon played well in the second half. I was I was literally sitting in the stands for that game, right behind the Falcons bench, with a lot of Falcons around me, and there were a lot of sweaty palms on Atlanta fans as they were marching downfield to what we all thought was going to be a game-winning touchdown. And here we are 3 years later, and we're sweating out these last-minute drives. This time it was the Bears on offense, and they just couldn't get it done. The last 2 weeks, of course, the Bears were on defense, barely holding off the Detroit Lions and the New York Giants. The Giants game is a game they should have won by 10 to 14 points, and it almost got away from them. And obviously, sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good. The Detroit game was just the opposite. We came back with the 3-touchdown comeback late in the game to give the Bears the victory. So When you take a look at the schedule for today, Detroit has got to go against the Arizona Cardinals. Detroit never plays well on the West Coast. So you're looking at it. You're looking at an 0-3 team. Minnesota's defense has been absolutely a shadow of what they were last year, and they got to go against Tannehill and Derrick Henry, even though they're at home. The Bears could be literally sitting at 3-0 with Detroit and Minnesota 0-3, and Green Bay at 2-1 going into Week 4 when they host the Indianapolis Colts.
I always thought this was a two-team race. As much as the national media wanted to go ahead and write off the Bears and say, predict ridiculous things, 13-3 or 3-13, going to be at the bottom of the division. I feel like it was always a two-team race because you don't have a complete team in Detroit. You have an old team in Minnesota and Green Bay. It's Aaron Rodgers he's a man on fire right now because of this past offseason. But now you know who you like. Now you know that it's only one guy. Now you know you don't have to truly worry about a Vikings or a Lions team because I don't think that they're going to be able to recover throughout the year. But I feel like it's always been a two-team race. I feel like the Bears have a good shot with their defense, and I feel like the Green Bay Packers are losing some of that Green Bay magic, if you will.
The only thing you got to look at, Aaron Rodgers has played lights out, in their running back, Aaron Jones, does he not lead the league in rushing? He had an amazing performance last week against Minnesota. I don't think he can do that against the Saints down in the Superdome tonight, even though there's going to be very little. I don't even know if New Orleans can let fans in the stadium, but it's going to be an interesting week. The Bears can literally find themselves sitting on top of the NFC North after 3 weeks. To that end, I do have the Bears winning this game. I think it's going to be 30-23, and that 23 will be a late touchdown in the fourth quarter by Atlanta to make the game closer than it appears.
I'm gonna go 40 or not 40. Excuse me, 34-17 Bears. I think Atlanta hangs in for a little while, and then you see the Bears defense start to chip away at the offensive line and really start to get to Matt Ryan.
Let's hope. Speaking of getting to Matt Ryan, I think that 5 sacks. I'm going to predict 5 sacks for the Bears offense today against the Atlanta Falcons because for a couple of reasons. Number one, if they get off to a 2-score lead like I'm anticipating, the Bears pass rush can just simply tee off, and they're going to take Gurley out of the game. And that said, with the front seven that the Bears have and a stout defensive back, their defensive backfield has played very, very well in the first 2 games, and they're all healthy, which is huge going into Week 3. Kyle
Fuller's having a quietly amazing season. Over 2. I mean, it's just 2 games, but he's been pretty locked down. I don't think maybe he has one catch against them, something like that. I'm not sure.
If you don't count the passes in front of him when they're playing soft zone, I think you're right.
But yeah, and he's playing like we thought, like he's playing like the guy that we thought we were gonna get in the first round. You know what I mean? And granted, we didn't think we were getting that guy for the first couple of years until somebody lit a fire under his ass and got him playing the way he is. But I'm happy that happened. I'm happy that happened. I'm happy for him.
He did not get lit until his contract year. That's when it happened and things turned on for him. And then, of course, if you recall, it was the Green Bay Packers that offered him a contract when he wasn't franchised, but they put a first-round tender on him. And Green Bay offered him a contract. The Bears matched it. And ever since then, Kyle Fuller has been playing lights out. And his counterpart on the other side, Jalen Johnson, if he's not the front leading contender for Defensive Rookie of the Year, I don't know who is, because he has been playing just phenomenal ball. And if he can get a pick or two against Atlanta today, that's really going to set the stage for him to have a blossoming career. That said, it's time.
Last thought, real quick, Mike. I predict Jalen Johnson gets his first pick of the year this game, and honestly, he might run into two, the way that I think the Bears are going to get after the quarterback today.
I'll go with that. With that, it's time for my partner Ivan to get ready for his pre-game and during game show. So please stay tuned for that. This is Mike HALATEK, and you've been watching the Barely Pre-Game Show. We'll see you next week.
I just heard my favorite band is in town. I'd love to get good seats, but everywhere I've looked, the ticket sites have crazy service fees.
Haven't you heard of TixSplits?
Who?
TixSplits. They don't gouge you with crazy fees. The price they advertise is the price you pay, plus a small delivery fee.
Never pay service fees again. Go to TIXBLITZ.com today. TixSplits.com. Guaranteed seats, low prices. That's TixSplits.com. Every ticket, every venue, everywhere.